Lexaria is working on a number of programs that meet unmet needs in biologic deliveries, hypertension, and smoking cessation, among other areas, and using their DehydraTECH technology. And I thought we might ask one of our or both of our guests to explain a little bit more how it works. And we have with us Chris Bunka, the CEO of the company, and we have John Docherty, who is its president. John, you're experienced in discussing difficult technical themes. Tell us about the DehydraTECH technology and how it works.
Yeah, sure thing. So our patented DehydraTECH allows us to combine drugs, active ingredients, together with certain fatty acid-rich triglyceride oils. In particular, we usually work with long-chain fatty acids. And we do this because we want to benefit from the physiological properties of these fatty acids when ingested or placed in the mouth. The way our technology operates, we combine the active with the fatty acid triglyceride oils through a dehydration processing technique. And this allows us to essentially combine the fatty acid and the active ingredient in a reversible fashion so those benefits can be enjoyed by the active ingredient. What are those benefits? Well, what we've shown is that upon oral dosing, we see higher levels of delivery into bloodstream, higher levels of delivery occasionally into brain tissue. And these are all because of the fatty acid-rich triglyceride oil absorption pathways that we are enjoying. And then one final benefit, which is also very exciting, these fatty acid-rich triglyceride oils, when combined with the actives, tend to have a benefit of reducing unwanted gastrointestinal side effects. So they're good for masking or eliminating things like nausea and diarrhea that can be associated with some drugs.
So in an earlier segment, we were talking about GLP-1 agonists as being a good complement to DehydraTECH. What are some of the agents, drugs, or compounds that work well, particularly well with the DehydraTECH technology?
Well, we began our research some years ago now, focusing on what you would call fat soluble or lipophilic molecules, and mainly small molecules. These were things like cannabinoids, certain forms of nicotine. We did a lot of work with antiviral drugs, phosphodiesterase inhibitors, human hormones, all of which we've formulated DehydraTECH variants of and shown either in animals and or humans benefits of higher absorption and better performance. And then as time went on, we started to look at the other major drug category being large molecules, oftentimes biologically derived drugs. And our first work program or foray into that space was through the fall of 2023 when we did our work with semaglutide that is popular in the oral format today, Rybelsus. And by working with semaglutide, now this is a large molecule, we've shown that DehydraTECH is also effective at delivering large molecule drugs and improving their performance. So it really seems that DehydraTECH is growing and broadening to be applicable really to the whole suite of small molecule and potentially many large molecule drug products.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. And one point we made earlier is that most of the biologics out there are not able to be delivered orally, which is it would be a big improvement in terms of convenience for that class of drug. I think most of what we've seen from DehydraTECH is oral administration of the technology, but I think it's more than that. How else can DehydraTECH be administered to patients?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of work, and I guess the bulk of our work is through oral ingestible, oral swallowable form factors and dosage forms. And that really is where DehydraTECH was born and what its initial focus and purpose was. But as time went on, we started to say to ourselves that given the fact we're working with these long-chain fatty acid-rich triglyceride oils, we theorized they would have benefit for deliverability in other routes of administration. So one other area where we've done quite a bit of work is in the oral mucosa. So
Hmm.
this is, something you put in the mouth that dissolves in the mouth, for instance, and the main route of delivery then is in the mouth. And we've shown it to be effective at delivering compounds like nicotine through oral, sublingual, or buccal administration. So as we go forward, we are expanding our research with, for instance, GLP-1 drugs like semaglutide to also evaluate if DehydraTECH semaglutide through an oral, buccal sublingual format would be beneficial. That could be a very exciting addition for us. And I guess finally, because the triglyceride oils have benefits through other tissues, we've done a little bit of work, some early stage work with other bioactive drugs showing effectiveness for topical administration, like onto the outer
Mm-hmm.
skin. That's not a main focus of attention for Lexaria, but we've certainly shown some initial promising work, and it does represent an area of potential expansion.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility for the technology. We've talked about hypertension and GLP-1 agonists, but Lexaria is a lot more than that. John, you just mentioned the nicotine work that you had done. There's also some out licensing that the company is working on with CBD. Chris, why don't you share with us, some of the other things you're working on in the consumer packaged goods space? I know right now that space isn't so hot, but sometimes what's not hot changes rapidly and it comes back into focus. And you have some exposure there. And I thought you could share with us just what you're working on in that area with DehydraTECH and possibly partners.
Yeah, absolutely, John. So, no, the CPG or consumer packaged goods space is a challenging one. There's not a lot of profit margin typically in that space, as consumers well know. So it can be a challenge. On the other hand, it's where our technology was kind of originally conceived. And viewers may or may not know this, but there are many millions of distinct organic molecules. And so the applicability of DehydraTECH or the extent of that applicability is still unknown. We've tested it on many substances, maybe moving into the small dozens of substances, but there are millions of substances that we could look
It's a
at.
tremendously broad platform, definitely. Yes.
Yeah, it really, really is. And so one of the things that we like to do is we like to see if we can find industry partners, even in the CPG space, that can help us to defray the costs
And
of
expand into all these
investigating.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you've mentioned some of the different areas we've worked. Sometimes we can find low-hanging fruit and we can actually generate some incremental revenue. The revenue is less important at this stage in the company's evolution than is the broadening of the
Hmm.
investigation. And if we can do that and save money at the same time, it seems to be a pretty good deal for our shareholders.
Yeah, and also the validation and recognition of the platform and what it's capable of. Um, these aren't your only partnerships, the CPG work that you're doing. You also have a couple of others. Sulfosin was one that you had mentioned, and then also Premier. Tell us about these, and I think you may be expecting some revenue, some partnerships with at least one of these entities and perhaps some others. Tell us what's going on in that area.
Yeah, Sulfosin is a really interesting one because that's a company that is exploring a molecule called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is an extract primarily from green leafy plants like broccoli and kale. Um, and it's a perfect example of what we were just discussing, John, because here's a molecule that most people have probably never even heard of. And there are a line of supplements starting to become available. It's a relatively new product format. We were approached by this company based in Europe to see whether or not our DehydraTECH would have any improvements on that molecule's delivery. We tested it in conjunction with sulfosin, and lo and behold, it did improve a number of the characteristics of that molecule. So we subsequently entered into a licensing agreement with them. They're not in production yet, but we are expecting them to be in production certainly in the second half
Hmm.
of this
Okay.
year. And while we're waiting, they are making some relatively small, but still incrementally positive minimum royalty payments to us. So it is adding a little bit to our bottom line. You also mentioned Premier. Premier is a company based in Tokyo, Japan, and they acquired a license with us, year and a half or getting close to 2 years ago, to use the DehydraTECH with CBD in the Japanese market. We awarded them an exclusive license to use the technology for that purpose. We have been aggregating revenue from them, again, minimum quarterly royalty payments from them. They also are not in production at this time. The Japanese market for CBD is very, very new, very fresh. And they have had some delays in getting to market, so we don't know when or if they might. But in the meantime, we are generating a little bit of incremental revenue. And one of the things I will point out to your listeners is, even if these numbers are small, even if they're only tens of thousands of dollars, in aggregate, we tend to do a couple or several hundred thousand throughout a year. But I'll remind you, when we are generating royalty revenues, our profit margins are approaching 100%,
Sure. Yeah.
certainly in excess of 95%. So, although the numbers appear to be quite small, it's extremely high quality revenue. So, these are all reasons why we don't want to abandon the consumer markets. And I will point out one last thing. When we're talking about consumer applications for the DehydraTECH, we use a slightly less powerful suite of processing terms or co-ingredients in the DehydraTECH suite for the consumer market than we do in the pharmaceutical market. Our most powerful suite of tools is reserved for pharmaceuticals only.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and it sounds like these arrangements and partnerships continue to help validate and help DehydraTECH get recognized not only in the United States but overseas as well. Great. Well, Chris Bunka, CEO of Lexaria Biosciences, and John Docherty, President of Lexaria Biosciences, thank you both for joining me today on Unboxing Biotech to talk more about the company and what you're working on in hypertension, GLP-1 agonists, and a lot of other areas as well.
Thanks so much,
Thank
John.
you.
Happy to be